A few weeks ago, I made a commentary video on why citing game prices in the 1990s to justify the rising cost of modern games in 2025 was a false equivalency, and I thought I did a pretty good job explaining why people were justifiably upset with the high price tag, and I thought I wouldn't have to make a follow-up video, but then again, I did use some antagonistic thumbnails and I called people poor in the intro, and I think a lot of people saw that and just went straight to the comments instead of watching my video. So let's try this again. Welcome to Retronomics, the series that follows price trends in video games, and boy oh boy has the modern video game price debate reached critical mass. On April 2nd, Nintendo gave details about the long anticipated and boringly named Nintendo Switch 2, and it's pretty much everything that Nintendo fans have been begging for since the first Switch came out. More power, a better screen, third-party games that weren't from the Xbox 360 era. Nintendo fans were finally being heard, and then the Nintendo Direct ended and they left out a small itty bitty detail: the price. Now, I was expecting a $400 maximum price tag. A new OLED OG Switch is $350, so a $50 price increase for what's essentially a Switch Pro seemed like a natural progression, and Nintendo would be stupid to discontinue the Switch 1 while it still sells hands over fists. So when I saw rumors that the Nintendo Switch 2 would have a 1080p screen with HDR and variable refresh rate, I call BS, because there's no way that Nintendo was going to include that type of screen with that type of power to run the screen for a retail price of $400. And I was right and wrong. Wrong that Nintendo Switch 2 wouldn't have a modern screen, but right that the Nintendo Switch 2 wasn't going to be $400. It starts at $450. Well, at least it did in the US. The tariffs are kicking the economy in the balls right now, and that might change for the US and the rest of the world, but time will tell on that. But $450 for the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't that bad of a price. In fact, it's a pretty good price given the hardware that's inside and the screen that powers it. It's capable of 120 frames a second at 1440p resolution, 4K at 60Hz if you hook it up to a TV, so it's not too shabby. It wouldn't be that big of a pill for Nintendo fans to swallow if it weren't for the bigger pill that you can't take orally. Yep, I'm talking about $80 Mario Kart, baby. And this, of course, reignited the debate that I thought was left behind. People once again started posting the same Toys R Us ads, and one with Canadian prices to really drive home the point, to let us know that in the 90s, games were more expensive, and $80 is still half of what they could cost if you adjusted for inflation. So be thankful that they aren't more expensive, because they totally could be. Now, I'm not going to go over that entire debate again, but one thing that I did leave out of my video, and something that people did comment on, was that $80 is still a good value for what you're getting, because games are more expensive to make today than they were back in the 1990s. And I always saw that argument, but I never saw any data to back it up, so I just looked it up. Using Street Fighter 2 as an example, the estimated budget was $2.45 million, or $5.72 million in 2025. So, okay, fair enough. It does reinforce my point that the cost of the game had more to do with the physical cartridge than the actual software, though, but I digress. Looking at development costs today, you have a handful that do cost over $100 million to develop. Last of Us Part 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Cyberpunk 2077 are all games that were made in the past 5 years with a budget of over $100 million. Star Citizen doesn't quite count. I mean, it's $500 million and it's still in early access, but that's a whole different story. This doesn't account for marketing either, and that can make the budget go higher, and that's just games that disclose the budget. Yet, despite that budget, those games' base prices never really went over $70 when they launched. Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West is still currently $60 on Steam and the PlayStation Store. So, should these games be $80 or more? Sure, why not? Price it whatever you want. If you are losing money by offering it at $60, it's only natural to raise the price to ensure that you can continue to make money. You can raise the prices to whatever you think the market will tolerate, but that means that there will be less people who will tolerate that price, which was the point of the original video. Raise game prices to $150 for all I care. Heck, people pay $200 for a collector's edition that may or may not include a physical copy of the game. People will pay $60 for a game that was $20 on the older system as long as they can play it on their new shiny new system. And they bought decade-old titles just because they have a physical version now. If people think it's a good price to them, then they'll pay it. People shelled out thousands of dollars to see Taylor Swift in concert. I bought the RetroTink 4K at $750. It's a phenomenal value for the price, but that doesn't mean that it's not expensive and not something that you can just buy without justifying a use case for. Should the price be lower? Well, if Mike can make it cheaper, why shouldn't he? And he did, with a different model that is lacking some features that most people wouldn't even miss, but it's $475. It's still expensive, but it's cheaper than the 4K Pro. And I got a pair of shoes for $350. Sounds expensive, and they are, but they were handmade, and when the sole wears out, I can take them to a cobbler and have them resold at least 7 times. So technically, I bought 7 pairs of shoes for $50 each. Would you pay that much for shoes? And I can afford a Nintendo Switch 2 along with a copy of Mario Kart World. They plan to sell a bundle for $500, and that's nothing. I bought a PlayStation 5 and PlayStation VR and stuff. Like, it's not really that big of a deal for me, but I won't buy it, and not because I'm protesting the price. No, like I said, it's a good price. It's just that there are a lot of things in my life that have gotten more expensive in the past 5 years, and my wage has only gone up 2% in the same amount of time, which means that I'm not as loose with my wallet as I used to be, and I'm spending my money on other luxuries that I would rather spend than a Switch 2. The tariffs are rocking the economy, and it might cause my company to lay off people, and I might be one of them. With that economic uncertainty, should I buy a $500 console that I might not use all the time? These are decisions that you need to make. It's been a long time since I played my original Switch. I barely play games at all now, and if I do, it's games on my phone. Balatro is a heck of a lot of fun and only costs $10. Animal Well on the PlayStation 5 was $30. It's a phenomenal game that was made by a tiny studio. I have a huge library of games spanning 50 years of consoles that I've been trimming down, and if I stop buying games today, I could live out the rest of my life and still not be able to finish them all. But I do get why people might be irritated by other people balking at the $80 Mario Kart. People online will complain about anything. When I made a video about the Playdate, people said it should only cost $100 because it didn't have a backlit screen, much less a color one, and you can buy a Switch Lite for the same price. Ipso facto, Playdate should cost less because they're totally a one-to-one comparison. So what I'm getting at is that value is subjective. I had no problem paying $200 for the Playdate, and I didn't buy a Switch Lite, but I did get a PlayStation Portable, which was kind of disappointing. But people have been conditioned by Nintendo to expect a budget gaming experience, all the while demanding a premium Nintendo console. Now they finally have that premium Nintendo console, but are baffled that Nintendo would charge a premium price. I guess they thought Nintendo would keep the price low because they're good guys? But I'm not going to justify the cost of these things because it's not my job to convince people to buy stuff that they don't already want to buy. I don't get paid to make any of these videos that I make on products, and at the very most, I will take a product and stage for a video. And it's a bizarre circumstance to see fans of a particular product get super defensive when people say it's not worth the price to them. If you find value in an $80 game, by all means, spend that money, but know that Nintendo is walking a fine line by expecting customers to pay $80 for a game instead of $60 or even $70, and it can blow up into their face. But they didn't have a choice. Oh, they had a choice. These companies aren't people, and they only care about how much money that they can make. The reason why games are $80 now isn't because costs are up. I mean, costs are up, but they need to maintain that shareholder expectation that the company will continue to turn a profit. They're doing it because people have shown that they're receptive to paying more. Look at the retro video game market. Nintendo games hold their value. People are shelling out $150 for Fire Emblem on the GameCube. During the pandemic, when the consoles were hard to find at MSRP, people were paying high secondary prices. Look at people pointing to 90s prices saying we should be grateful that games aren't more expensive. Those people have no issue paying these prices, and they'd buy it for $100 if you asked them to. And yes, game development has gotten more expensive, but the economy of scale has increased dramatically, and I do think that it's a genuine mistake that Nintendo is making here. They could have easily priced the Switch 2 at $500 and kept the games maxing out at $70, or even sell at $450 with games at $70. A luxury product is only worth what people are willing to pay for it. And I'm not saying that we're not getting a tremendous value for what we're paying today, but that's not how business pricing works.
Also, why is it my responsibility if the budget is too high for you? Like, why is that my problem as a consumer? Like, does that factor into my enjoyment of the game? Like, if I played a game and the budget was like $100 million or so and it sucked, and I was like, yeah man, this game really is just terrible, like I didn't like The Last of Us, and somebody chimed in and it's like, well, did you know that they had a budget of over $100 million? And I wouldn't be like, oh well, when you say it that way, I guess the game is actually pretty good. I actually would be pretty disappointed if I found out that the budget was that high for a game quality that low. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's $80. You're figuring out like how much fun you're having, and you're not actually like invested into a company more than what you already buy the game. It's a transaction. Like, you're paying $80 or $70 or whatever, and you're getting a game out of it. And after you're finished with the game, that's all that it is. Like, you don't get any more money back unless like you sell it, but that's not really factored into the actual budget of a game development. And also, like, if a game does really well, do all of the workers get like a special bonus or something like that? Like, where is my money going towards this $100 million budget? Like, again, like, it's really not any of my concern at all. Like, if I told you that this video costs, I don't know, $5,000 to produce, would you like it more? Would you, pay me more money or something like that? Like, would you do something like that? Like, I mean, let me know, because I mean, I'll start saying that these videos cost a lot of money if it makes me more money. But, like, come on.
So for example, let's say that Nintendo did really spend $100 million on developing Mario Kart World. In order to break even at $80, they would need to sell 1.25 million copies. It's not bad, right? If they sold at $70, they would need to sell 1.43 million copies, or 200,000 more copies than the $80 price. And you would need to sell 1.66 million copies, or 400,000 more, if you priced it at $60. And that's just for the physical copy, which assumes that there's a little bit of manufacturing that is added to the cost. Digital copies have no such manufacturing costs aside from the back-end upkeep, which is spread across the entire platform and made up for with transaction fees charged to other developers. They still will never sell out of these games, and they can't be sold on the secondary market. It's a fixed price. But it's Mario Kart, it's not really that popular. They need to price it so that way they know that they can make the money. It's not like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe didn't sell 67.35 million copies. And that didn't have a permanent price cut in 8 years. Sure, it's had some sales, but never a permanent price cut. The Nintendo Switch hasn't had a price cut either. There have been cheaper SKUs with features missing or refurbished units, and an expensive SKU to make the base version cheaper in comparison. comparison. 8 years and sales haven't had any indication that they're slowing down. And there's no Nintendo Selects this generation either, something that has been on every generation since the NES. The Nintendo Switch is the best-selling console of all time, unless Sony comes out with some PS2 sales hidden under the sofa again. They could have easily subsidized the cost of Mario Kart World with the profits that they made off of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to sell at $60 and sold twice as many copies than if it was $80. Heck, if you buy the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World together, Mario Kart World is only $50. The demo game Welcome Tour that they announced is a title that you have to purchase for $10. Apparently, Reggie had to beg Nintendo to include Wii Sports with the Wii. It's a foreign concept to Nintendo to have a title that showcases all of the features of the console included with the system. And those are called loss leaders for a reason. You get people in the door with an item that you lose money on, but you make it up with more sales of the item that you have a higher market for. But Nintendo knows that they have a legion of fans who will line up to buy this thing day one along with every release that they come out with. They'll buy their kids their own Switch 2s and their own copies of Mario Kart World. When asked about the prices of the games, Doug Bowser said that they would use variable pricing for games. He didn't elaborate on that, but I think it means that the more popular a game is projected to be, the more expensive it'll be. I know that it seems counterintuitive to what I recently talked about, but this is a business model that more and more companies are moving towards. And you see kind of remnants of it in the retro video game market when something gets talked about on YouTube or whatever. Popularity incites demand, and the price progresses until that demand subsides. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold gangbusters at $60, so the next one will be more expensive to capture more profits. And if that sounds insidious, it's because it is. Ticketmaster pulls this garbage, and some grocery companies have floated the idea of dynamic pricing to ensure that profits are always maximized. And who knows, maybe the $80 price tag was to take advantage of early adopters, and they'll drop it to $60 by Christmas and increase the sales even more. Nintendo's brand is so strong that people are proving themselves because GameCube games are finally going to be available, trickled out piecemeal to extract as much as your NSO Plus subscription as possible, and it's only available on the Nintendo Switch 2. And don't forget that wireless GameCube controller, which only works on the Nintendo Switch 2 and probably only with GameCube games. That's why I'm certain that Nintendo Switch 2 will do just fine priced at $450. The $80 game debate is fun because people think that one day companies will just come around and bring the prices back down, and nope. As long as they make their sales projections, those game prices will still be that high. This is just the next ratchet. $70 was absurd only a few years ago, and now it's the standard. The only way it comes down is if people don't buy it, and don't pirate it either. And I don't care if you pirate or not, but the main argument of piracy before the whole preservation BS is that it acts as free advertising. And it's been proven time and time again that piracy doesn't affect overall sales. And yeah, if you're talking about how much you love the new Mario Kart World, even if you're pirating, not everyone is going to go and pirate it. They're going to go buy it and give Nintendo money, which will make up for the copy that you pirated. It's not the moral victory that you think it is. Some people think that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be like the Wii U or the 3DS, where the initial price didn't match the value and had to be cut. And the Switch 2 is no slouch, and it's priced competitively, assuming that tariffs don't mess with it. That's the biggest wildcard right now. This thing is supposed to launch in June, and they're already postponed pre-orders in the United States and Canada, with no indication that they'll start back up again. If you are a person who genuinely thinks that $80 for a game is absurd, I don't blame you. Wait for a sale or buy it used or play any number of games that are available right now for way less. Take this as an opportunity to branch out and explore some indie games that will fit your budget. Like I said, Animal Well is great, Balatro is great. There are so many independent studios out there that are selling games for a reasonable price, and they're way better than something that you could probably pay $80 for. There's also so many sales on games that were $60 or $70 when they were released, and now they're way more manageable. I bought the modern Tomb Raider games for $5 each. Sales like that happen all the time. In fact, the trilogy for Tomb Raider is available right now on the PlayStation Store for $15. If you still want to play Mario Kart World, maybe don't buy another game for a while. I mean, it's your money and you're under no obligation to financially support these billion-dollar companies just because you played their games when you were 7 years old. They aren't your buddies struggling to make a startup happen, especially Nicktendo, who will sue you into oblivion if you so much as think about stealing those games. Plus, if you can afford to buy a Switch 2 for $450, what's another $80? Or just buy the bundle and save $30. I don't know, I ain't your dad. But when I consider buying something as a luxury, I consider how much fun per dollar I'm going to have with that thing. I don't factor in the cost of development any more than I consider the budget of a film that I want to go see. I'm turning 42 this year, and I've gotten really into golf. I still play video games, but getting the opportunity to play 18 holes for $20 is way more valuable than paying $80 for a game that I might not put more than the same amount of time into. But that's just me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I'm trying to make more frequent casual content like this, and I'm still making other more high value videos, but so many people commented the same thing on that previous video that I figured that I would make another video about this. So if you really liked it, like the video, comment on what I can do to improve, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Nick, and I'll see you next time.